Can everybody hear all right? Yes? Oh,
You're on. Bring the mic up.
Did you find out to just pass
I'm sure we all know why we're here, but I'll just reiterate. We're here because of a variance request from the Kirchhoff Medical Properties for a variance from 35 feet, which is what's allowed in the residential district, to 38 feet 6 inches. 3 foot 6 inch variance. This was referred to the Dutchess County Department of Planning, who has said it's a matter of local concern, so we didn't get any input from them. The Planning Board reviewed this and gave us a recommendation. I will read that. A motion was made by Tim Decker, seconded by Mary Quinn, that the Planning Board recommend to the Zoning Board of Appeals that the variance be granted to Kirchhoff Medical Properties / Northern Dutchess Hospital located at 6511 Springbrook Avenue and 95 to 99 Montgomery Street. Based upon the conclusions set forth in the Planning Board's negative declaration and upon the following facts. 1, the variance is the minimum necessary to provide the required services and equipment necessary for the hospital function. 2, the variance is consistent with the height variance previously granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals for Phase 1 addition. And 3, that the proposed building will be architecturally compatible with the prior construction. That was voted 5 in favor and none against, and none abstained. Before I turn this over to the applicant, I just want to remind everybody we're here to talk about a variance for the height of the building, 3.5 feet. Issues like parking, grass, trees, sidewalks, traffic, et cetera, are all planning board issues. And of course, the public and planning board and the applicant have exercised all those items to conclusion, I guess. We're going to deal only with the height variance here tonight, nothing else. So this time I'll turn it over to the applicant to make any presentation they care to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. My name is Jeff Kane. I'm with Kirchhoff Medical Properties. Joined here this evening by some members of the team, including Carrie May and Kirsten Waltz, architects from Steffi and Bradley Architects, and Larry Boudreau, our landscape architect from Chazen Engineering. Also Joe Kirchhoff from Kirchhoff Medical Properties. Don't want to forget Joe. And members again of both the HealthQuest and Northern Dutchess Hospital staff, board, and administration. So again, there's a fair amount of information which has been presented to the public as part of the planning process. As you indicated, Mr. Chairman, there's been a lot out there already. We do feel it necessary to go through some of the details again because there are members of the board here certainly who haven't heard some of these issues, and we want to make sure that we've described in at least some detail some of the issues which are we think relevant to the variance. But let me, I can start here. As you said, we've been working with the planning board for really almost a year. Our first presentation to them was in January of this year, and we've been working with them consistently through the past few months. The planning board has completed their review under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And issued a negative declaration and adopted a set of findings related to that. This board was an involved agency as part of that seeker review, and again has been included in that entire seeker process. That negative declaration was adopted also on December 3rd and unanimously by the planning board. And as you said, we're here for a 3.5 foot height variance. But really the planning for this project started not this year, although we've only been here for a year. It started in 2004. This was really master planned by the planning board to add what you can see on the top here, the 2005 edition. It was a master plan to really incorporate what's now the Rosenthal Pavilion. So that project was really phase 1 of the project. The planning board reviewed all of the issues, the full expansion. The board set limits in terms of parking. It set an architectural style. It set limits on landscaping. Set limits on the lighting levels. And those items have really been carried through since that time. We're talking more than 9 years. Been carried through into this phase 2 of the project. Back in 2004, again, this board granted a 5-foot height variance for this structure. Again, same zone, 35-foot limit. Granted a variance to 40 feet to allow the 3-story, 40-foot building. And this building, in fact, had penthouses which extended as much as 52 feet above the ground level. The phase 2 expansion, which is where we are right now, was anticipated that it would fall within the overall 48 feet of the existing hospital, and so we've again maintained that by taking the height of this building to 38 and a half feet. So what we want to walk through a little bit is why that building has to be where it is, why it has to be as high as it is, and really again talk through some of the potential issues which we have heard, and I want to make sure that the board gets ample information on. So I'll turn it over to Carrie May now, who can take us through some more of that the proposal.
Good evening. I'm Carrie May. I'm with Steffi & Bradley Architects, as Jeff already mentioned. And just to give you a little bit of history on this project, the originally anticipated phase 2 portion of this project was projected to be built back in 2008, 2009. So since this project was delayed, in that time frame, there was a change in the governing regulations for the design of healthcare facilities. The approved 2004 application was based on the 1999 edition of the Guidelines for Design of Healthcare Facilities. So New York State recently adopted the 2010 edition, which skipped over entirely the 2006 edition. So we've actually jumped incrementally forward in the requirements that are much more stringent today than they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And those stringent requirements include increased requirements for square footages, natural light requirement, ceiling restrictions in terms of minimum overhead heights, HVAC requirements, and so on and so forth. The change in these regulations made it basically impossible to renovate the existing 40 patient rooms that are in place in the hospital today. So the size of the proposed phase 2 addition therefore increased to accommodate this 40-bed replacement of the patient rooms. Because of the change regulations, the total square footage of phase 2 increased from the conceptual 30,000 square feet that was planned back in 2004 to now just under 87,000 square feet. The height of the building is still within the originally conceptually designed 3-story building height, and the footprint is the only thing that has grown to accommodate the increased requirements for minimum square footages for single patient bedrooms and natural light requirements. The zoning administrator has determined that the height of this building is 38'6", thus requiring a 3'6" height variance. The addition designed by our office is a flat roof building, and it has a mechanical screen to hide some of the equipment that's sitting on the roof. So one of the critical design pieces of this was to maintain the adjacencies of the program for the new addition with the program that is to remain in the existing hospital, specifically the second floor where the patient bedrooms will be. This is going to have the most traffic back and forth between the existing hospital and where the new patient bedrooms will be located. And it's critical for patient, visitor, and staff safety that there will be minimal, or in our case, no ramping between those two connection points. You can see here from our second floor design that our patient bedrooms dance around the entire perimeter of the building. The footprint and the size of the building has been entirely determined by this second floor and the square footage requirements for all of the patient rooms. The new patient rooms must align with the existing hospital, where the existing ICU unit will remain, the rehabilitation unit, the maternity beds, and the vacated beds for the patient unit will now be in this new newly designed single-bed unit that will have all of the square footage requirements to meet today's standards. The floor-to-floor height for the proposed addition's second floor patient bed unit is 12 feet. This is the minimum floor height prerequisite in order to provide the required mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems required by code as displayed by this depicted graphic. As we move up to the third floor, we'll see that the proposed addition holds the new surgical suite with 6 ORs and related support space. This is the most appropriate location for the new surgical suite. Placing this program on the third floor allows continued access with the existing procedure suite, which will continue to perform endoscopy and pain management procedures and house surgical support services such as physician offices and on-call spaces. It is this third floor suite that generates the need for the largest floor-to-floor height due to the equipment and mechanical spaces needed above the ceiling. Placing the surgical suite on the third floor maximizes the compatibility with floor-to-floor heights in the existing building and minimizes our need to ramp between the levels in the connection back to the existing. The operating room floor requires a 16-foot floor-to-floor height due to the stringent above-ceiling mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural surgical equipment support. Each operating room has a code minimum 10-foot ceiling height. In addition to this ceiling height, there is a zone that has to be dedicated to support the structure for the equipment booms that are required to provide the medical surgical procedures in the operating rooms. There's a mechanical zone to provide all of the stringent air changes that are required by the new codes, and obviously the structures to support the roof above. From an architectural standpoint, the design of this third floor OR suite is the largest contributing factor to the necessity for the height variance due to the unique programmatic needs and the regulatory requirements governing the design of operating rooms. In keeping with the best practices of hospital design, the first floor integrates public access functions, registration, visiting, office functions, and the private patient and operating functions take place on the higher floors. It is not appropriate under standards of hospital design to place either patient rooms or the operating rooms on the first floor. The first floor of the proposed addition will enhance the existing circulation system by directing all of the public traffic through this new corridor that connects to the existing west wing, where the cafeteria is located on the lower level. And it improves the existing circulation system, which actually takes the public right now through clinical spaces of the hospital. This first floor cannot reasonably be eliminated or reduced in height. It has a 12-foot floor-to-floor level, which requires, again, the code minimum ceiling heights and the space above the ceiling for the mechanical equipment to serve those spaces. The square footage of this floor simply matches the other levels and provides a variety of common space, public space, corridors, security, mechanical and electrical rooms, and medical office space. The zoning administrator has determined that the proposed medical offices are permitted as they are an integral part of the hospital function. In order to minimize the required height variance, the level of the first floor of the addition has actually been lowered 1 foot into the ground and from the existing hospital elevation to reduce the height of the addition as much as possible. Lowering the building further into the ground would not actually be an option, as this would create a ripple effect on the other floors and would create ramped conditions that would make navigating the connection between the two buildings inaccessible for handicapped, and it would create a dangerous situation for the staff and equipment traffic. The clinical functions of the existing hospital were truly the key driver in aligning the services provided in the new addition. Additionally, our proposed design incorporates significant design elements to assure that we limit the impacts of the height variance. Techniques have been used to reduce the perceived scale of the building, such as raising this red brick base and thickening the depth of that decorative cornice at the top to help reduce the overall scale of the building. The result is a cohesively designed building which extends the language of the architecture already present on campus. The colors and the materials of the proposed addition have been designed to match the existing Paul Rosenthal Pavilion, which, as you know, was completed in 2005. And another important factor is that the street elevations on both Route 9 and Montgomery along the borders of our property are several feet higher than the grade at the proposed addition. This will minimize the appearance of the height of the proposed addition, and the screening in the form of both landscaping and new fencing have been proposed to help enhance views of the property. As the board considers this need for this variance, we ask you to consider that the new patient rooms and OR suite are critical to bring Northern Dutchess Hospital up to today's standards for hospital facilities. The proposed footprint is the minimum footprint that can accommodate a replacement of the existing 40 patient rooms to today's standards. The proposed 38'6" height is the minimum height that can provide the necessary adjacencies for patient movement on the second floor and to accommodate the necessary equipment above the operating suites. These heights cannot be lowered, nor can these functions be moved to other floors. This design has been created to limit any adverse impacts of the height variance with the historic and vibrant community in mind. We have minimized the variance by lowering the grade of the building by a foot. The design has lowered the apparent height. The apparent height is also reduced by the higher grades surrounding the addition. And finally, although we believe that the building is attractive, landscaping and screening have been provided around the building to soften and screen any views of the addition. And because of these factors, we are confident that the proposed addition will be an invaluable asset to the Rhinebeck community.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to spend a couple minutes then talking about some of the factors that show what we've done to really reduce the potential for significant adverse environmental impacts. One of the things that we've done is provide visual simulations of the existing hospital grounds and the hospital grounds with the actual construction of the building and the landscaping in place. This is a photo stem taken at the corner of Route 9 and Montgomery. You're looking northbound on 9 and really kind of northwestbound on Montgomery. This is the existing access most people use to go into the hospital in this existing photo here. So taking this photo and the proposed hospital, again built with a variance in place, is then superimposed behind the landscaping. The landscaping is then changed, particularly in this corner. It's mostly amended. We've added a lot of green space here, really removed this driveway and amended the plan with a significant number of trees and shrubs to really improve the view from that particular vantage point. Again, minimal impact. Here's a simulation taken on Montgomery between one of the existing structures that Northern Dutchess Hospital now uses to house their foundation. As part of this plan, this house is proposed for removal, and again to keep an attractive residential feel on this portion, we've planted and have an attractive cedar board-on-board fence proposed in this area to really screen any of the parking that exists and will be expanded in this portion of the lot. That's all screened, and you can just see the proposed building here. Again, we've picked a combination of both higher vegetation and lower vegetation and the fencing to screen views from the Montgomery side of the site. And then the other thing which we've really done, we talked about in 2004, the planning board wanted to set limits on the extent of parking. We in August of this year presented a plan which extended the parking field consistent with the 2004 vision and approval of the planning board. And so that's this line out here. Now, what you're seeing underneath here, the existing, this darker gray is the existing parking field. So you can see the extent of the new proposed parking was this lighter gray area through here. So this was actually a little better than what they'd asked for in 2004. The parking didn't extend this far into into the site and didn't extend as close to Route 9 as what they had talked about in 2004. We did a little better than what they asked for. But then we went back to the planning board, and went back to our drawing board and got a little better still. And then prepared what became the October plan, and we've actually had some minor tweaks get a little better still. But you can say that between August and October, really reclaimed this area of the site back into its existing conditions. So let me just kind of flip between those again. You can see the changes between the two plans and the additional landscape and added. Now, one of the things that the planning board said is that we actually planted too many trees. The tree commission did a walk over the site, analyzed the trees that were proposed removal, analyzed the trees that were proposed to be planted, and talked about really what some of the goals were for the tree commission. Planning board adopted a number of those issues, and so the plan was additionally amended to create this plan. And the idea is that this area didn't get as heavily planted. Most of these trees are existing, but to leave this as a more open green area here, the planning board and actually the village board have been strong proponents, very happy with the extension of the sidewalk, really running the entire length of the hospital's property from all along Route 9, all along Montgomery. We have sidewalk along the entire length, and a little network of sidewalk and pathways in this area to both bring people from Route 9 into the hospital, this being the main entrance, and to provide an area of respite here right outside the front door. So again, this is the proposed parking field. What's in dark gray is what exists. So we have again a small occlusion of parking in that area. There's been a lot of misinformation out there. I hear it, and I know it's misinformation because I know the truth. And one of the things that I know everybody's heard before is that we get Stop and Shop lighting here. I just want to be clear. Stop and Shop, and we're talking about the Stop and Shop up here in the town, has 32-foot high poles with an average foot candle across the parking lot of 4-foot candles. Again, that's how bright that is. What we have here, again, based on where the planning board started in 2004, what we have here are LED fixtures throughout the new parking fields. They range between 12.5 and 14 foot tall, with an average foot candle of 1. So we're much lower, much less lighting than Stop and Shop. In fact, the comparison is just there really isn't one. What happens with lower light fixtures is that you have to have more even to get the 1 foot candle. So there are light fixtures through here, but we've been very careful working with our designer to keep the lighting, we think, very modest while maintaining a safe facility here. You drive through the campus, and yes, it is in use. It is in use all the time, and so safety needs to remain a priority throughout this site. And again, we believe the work we've done with with pedestrian access, with the lighting, with the landscaping, have really all served to head off any potential environmental impacts related to this building. And I guess the last thing I want to say here is that. One more time, the height is related. The height variance request is related to the operating rooms. The third floor needs to match third floor. Right, that's where the operating rooms are. That's where they're going to be. Current code, we need 16 feet floor to floor to get the structure, get the mechanicals, meet the current requirements for operating rooms. The old operating rooms carry are 14 feet. So we've got that requirement that just puts us up further into the building there. It's not the medical offices. that are at all driving this variance. And that's just probably the single biggest thing I think you can then take away. It really is this building, form follows function. That's why we have the third floor operating rooms where they are. That's where they're hired. That's why we've asked for this variance. I'll turn it over to Jennifer Van Tel for a couple minutes as well to speak through some of the questions which you must answer.
I'm going to be brief tonight, and I'd just like to highlight several points from the Planning Board seeker determination that was provided to you that you may find relevant as you weigh the potential benefits of the variance to the applicant vis-a-vis any potential detriment to the community.
Could you tell us what your relationship to this project is?
Yes, I'm a land use attorney and I represent the applicant, so I
Okay.
represented them in the preparation of the seeker documents. So as you recall, you consented this summer to the Planning Board serving as lead agency under seeker, and that meant that the Planning Board was placed in charge of running the seeker analysis. And I know that while you've been reading about what's been going on in the paper, there have been hearings, many documents reviewed by the Planning Board, but what you have now received from the Planning Board is a determination of significance under seeker, which in fact determined that there would not be any significant impact on the environment in any aspect of the project. And one of the aspects of the project that was considered by the Planning Board was the height. So as you evaluate potential impacts on neighborhood character, which is part of your evaluation of a variance, it's legitimate for you to consider the findings that the Planning Board has made regarding some of the issues that are in the same field of concern. So I'm just going to highlight several of them. I know that each of you have received a copy of the negative declaration and have read it. But following up on what Jeff said on lighting, page 22 of the negative declaration, says that all lighting is cut-off lighting, meaning that it's directed downward. The average level is 1 foot candle, which is a low level of lighting in keeping with Greenway guidelines. The plan minimizes potential spill of light off-site. The pedestrian crossing across Montgomery Street has some added illumination for safety, which is also in keeping with Greenway guidelines. As to the preservation of the lawn area that Jeff showed in the 2 toggled slides, page 18 of the negative declaration points out that the original plan, as approved in 2004 and as submitted in August of 2013, preserved 64% of the existing lawn area in front of the hospital. The revised plan now preserves 82% of the existing lawn. Now, the negative declaration devoted 7 full pages, pages 17 to 23, to the impact of the hospital project on the neighborhood in many aspects. Impact on historic character, historic district community, impact on residential neighborhoods, etc. I'm certainly not going to read you 7 pages. I know that you've read it, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of items. First, the negative declaration stated, the hospital also contributes to the character of the village of Rhinebeck. While it is located within a residential zoning district, the village zoning regulations recognize a hospital use as a specially permitted use. The character of the residential neighborhood that includes Northern Dutchess Hospital is one that has an active and vibrant hospital campus. The addition of more of the same use, if done with care and consideration, does not change or affect the character of the neighborhood, but builds on the village's land use goals to have a well-functioning hospital at the present location. The hospital also provides an appropriate transition between the village center and commercial areas to the north. The proposed architecture and installation of new sidewalks along Montgomery and Route 9 frontages will also enhance the village character. Further, the proposed use, the expansion of a community hospital within its existing campus, is compatible with adjoining properties, the intent and principles of the residential district, wherein a hospital has been classified as a special permit use. On traffic, the impacts were discussed, and the document concluded on page 25 that under existing conditions, the analysis of the unsignalized intersection at Route 9 and Montgomery Street shows excellent to acceptable levels of service for all movements except the lightly used Montgomery Street left turn onto Route 9. This left turn movement is consistent in efficiency with similar left turn movements during peak hours at other side streets along Route 9. It is a condition that is normal along heavily used state highways. The negative declaration found that these same conditions would prevail in the build condition. Now, since the Planning Board is the lead agency under seeker, the Planning Board's conclusion that there is not a significant impact is binding on all other involved agencies from an environmental point of view. But you are also entitled to give the determinations of the Planning Board weight as you go about your own deliberation in weighing the benefits of the variance to the applicant and the potential harm to the community. We submit that there is actually no detriment to the neighborhood and that the Planning Board's determination supports that conclusion. I'd just like to make one final comment relating to the 5 standards and the overall balancing test. As you've pointed out, the issue before this board is balancing the impacts and benefits of the height variance. It is not the purpose of this board to rehash the entire site plan, which has been considered by the Planning Board. And in that regard, I believe that the discussion of details of medical offices and where else they may or may not be appropriate and lawfully located in other parts of the village is really irrelevant, because as Carrie has pointed out and Jeff reiterated, what is on the first floor does not generate any part of the need for the height variance. The height variance is a function of the need to have companion levels at the second floor level for movements of patients, and the excess height required for the equipment on the third floor, so that whether the medical offices are there or something else is on the first floor really has no relevance to the need for the variance. Now, as to the 5 factors in the overall balancing test, we believe that our presentation has shown how we do meet those standards. We've certainly minimized the variance that we are seeking by techniques including lowering the building. There is no alternative to the variance that we seek. There is no way to provide the operating room suites and the new patient rooms without having this height variance. We've also minimized the impact of the variance by means of architectural design, features that lower the apparent height of the building. We've incorporated the fact that grade around our site is actually higher. And we've also incorporated screening in the form of fencing, which has been changed from the original vinyl proposed to a cedar board on board to be more natural, and also ample landscaping. Even if our difficulty, which is like that of every other applicant that voluntarily undertakes construction, considered self-created in that regard, I think the board is aware that that fact alone does not prevent the issuance of an area variance. We believe that our variance of 3 foot 6 inches is not significant and is certainly less than this board has already granted for the Phase 1 addition. And overall, we submit that there is no detriment to the neighborhood by this proposal and the height variance, let alone one that would outweigh the great benefit of this proposed addition. And that is a benefit I would submit that is not only a private benefit to those who are applying for it, but is in itself a benefit to the community and by the community services that it will provide to the public and to residents of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are available, should you have any questions you'd like us to respond to. We're certainly here to answer
I have
those.
one question, just a technicality. I've been advised that the site plan shows the proposed height to be greater than 40 feet. I think that's an error on a site plan.
It is a typo that we will fix.
It's
Yes.
just technically, that should be able to correct that.
Absolutely, and clearly the planning board hasn't granted final approval, but that'll be corrected to the,
Okay.
again, should the variance be granted, it'll be corrected to the 38.6, so, thank you.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant at this point?
I do. No? Would you like to
No,
go
no,
first?
please, no.
Ms. May, would you take us back to the elevations?
Larry, you gotta speak louder.
I asked her to take us back to the elevations.
Oh, okay.
And these are up to date.
Correct.
So we have a three-story building there, which is the existing building.
Correct.
And the addition looks like it's a little higher. Is that true, or?
Sorry, my pointer's not working.
You know, I feel that the applicant has very good precedent for this building, and I'm just asking you to confirm that the new addition is a foot or two? Is it 3 feet? How much taller is the new addition than the existing, most recent addition?
Well, I think what I'll do is show you the comparative sections, because I
Good.
think it explains it a
Fine.
little bit better.
Yep,
The
but I just wanted to
construction,
review this, and while you're doing it, would you go around to the western view? Are we looking at the western elevations in this picture?
this,
Western elevation.
sure,
So there's the, on the top drawing,
Yep.
is the new proposed addition. And there's a rehab center which is on the west side. So that comes up only to like a third of the way up the second floor. Is that correct? That's what we're looking at? That's the...
it is a one-story building, and the reason we're actually allowed to be so close here, patient rooms actually require a 30-foot separation from another building in order to get the natural light that's required by code. So if you notice in the floor plans, we have a long connector on one side because the building is 3 stories on that side that it's connecting, and those patient rooms need that separation distance. Whereas on the west side, where the existing west wing exists, the patient rooms are allowed to be much closer because it's a 2-story building next to a 1-story building,
Okay,
or second floor.
go to your section with ramps. That,
So this is the section that I was hoping to show you here to compare the building heights. It depends on what building element you're focusing on when you ask if our building is taller than their building. They used a mansard roof edge detail, which as part of the construction builds up the roof edge to look more like a sloped roof, but it's integral to the roof construction itself. And they've actually built in structure and support spaces up here. Our building has a slightly higher cornice, but the overall height of the building is actually less than the existing. It's just a perceived height because of the playing of the eaves and the cornice line. What you see right next to it here, this is the stair tower, and the stair tower, that 52-foot height that was talked about earlier, that was part of the 2004 application. The stair tower is, I believe, 52 feet, and that's consistent with the penthouse, the mechanical penthouse that's on the existing building as well.
could you go back and show us that on your elevations?
That's not ours, that stair tower is not ours.
That stair tower is not ours, that's the 2004.
That tower is there or has been
It's
eliminated?
there. It's
Thank
part
you,
of
Jeff.
the emergency department elevation.
Okay,
So we can't show it to you on ours.
because it's not there. It's
Well,
around-
It is on the edge there.
There it
let me
is
show
on the
you,
right.
here it is over here. This is the stair tower that you're seeing. And that block in the middle, that's the mechanical penthouse. And what you see here is another mechanical penthouse for the renovated operating rooms. So this lower portion of the building where the main entrance is today, that was brought down to a 2-story entrance for the pedestrian access, but everything bumps back up to 3 stories around that main entrance.
Could you go back to your sections, please? Yes. Now, would your need for I notice, if I'm seeing it correctly, that the actual height of the second floor in the proposed is not that much above the soffit line of the existing building. Could the proposed building also have that roof, mansard roof, the fake mansard roof? Could it also be on that other building to the right?
We started with a detail like this, and in order to get this detail, our roof gets much bigger. And what we're proposing is a mechanical screen that simulates that same effect so that it has the same character and the same scale. But if we were to do a detail similar to this, you would perceive the building as much taller. And the reason for that is we really cannot cut into the mechanical spaces that are above the ceiling, because this is exactly where the ORs exist on the third floor. So this is where we have the most stringent mechanical requirements above the ceiling.
So what you're saying is you can't match the height and feel of the mansard roof on the left, on the right, because of some mechanical, technical problem?
If we were to match this exact same detail,
Close.
Right. If we were to match that same detail, we would be starting the cornice from up here and bringing it much higher, so the perceived building height would be much higher, yes.
Okay. Well, we could go around about that, but we're not going to do it. So what is going to happen to the 40 rooms that are being repurposed?
I'm gonna let the hospital speak on that point.
I'm Dave Ping with HealthQuest and representing Northern Dutchess Hospital tonight. The 40 rooms that are being repurposed, we have said that there's a couple things that we are going to do with those. One is that the birthing center needs to be expanded. There's more births that are being done in the birthing center now. So we're going to come down the hallway that is adjacent to the birthing center, and we'll use some of those rooms for that. We've said that, other things, we aren't sure what's going to go in there right now. We know that there's a need for chemotherapy and transfusion infusion space. And we don't have that space today. And so we'd be looking to perhaps use some of that for that. We've also said that one of the other considerations is that the reimbursement has changed so that now you can be in the hospital for 2 days and the feds and we're considered an outpatient. I don't know how that works exactly, that you're in the hospital for 2 days overnight and you're an outpatient, but you are. And so we might need to create an observation, they call those patients observation patients now, the CMS, the Medicare calls that an observation patient now. So we might need to create a space for 4 to 6 patients in that area that would be observation patients, and do that in that area as well. Those are patients that are currently in the inpatient rooms, and they would go to that status. So other than that, we aren't sure what's going to go in that space right now. And we are going to have some, so it would not be able to be used for some of the inpatient purposes because of the code issues that were discussed previously.
Could I just add one point, getting back, could you put back up your comparative sections? I just want to underline what Carrie was saying. We believe that the chosen design for the new addition with this roof detail done this way was part of our obligation to minimize the request for the variance. Because in addition to making the building look taller, but if we were to use the same type of actual mansard roof that was used on the original section, it would in fact be measured much higher. So we would have to come before this board seeking a substantially more extensive variance, which we didn't want to do because we recognized our obligation to minimize the variance. But I think the factor that makes a different treatment appropriate is that the essence of why the building itself gets taller is because of that 16 feet mechanical space above the operating rooms, which can only be on the third floor in order to match services in the existing hospital. So that's the explanation of why that we wanted to fulfill our legal obligation to minimize the variance.
Jennifer, does this variance eliminate all mechanicals off the roof?
There will be mechanical equipment, but what this variance accommodates is that there will be no exposed ductwork on the roof, for example. If you've seen some of the aerial shots of the existing hospital, they had to renovate 2 of their ORs recently, and there's significant ductwork, exposed ductwork on the roof.
Okay.
It's a maintenance nightmare, honestly, because they have to have it insulated and maintain it on a regular basis because it's all exposed to the elements as opposed to being in a ceiling enclosed space. And I actually just wanted to step back to Dave's point. On the second floor,
Great, how about, yes.
Sure, on the second floor, what I just wanted to point out for the benefit of the board is that this new footprint that we're showing 40 patient beds in, okay, it's just over 25,000 square feet. We're only replacing 7,500 square feet in the existing hospital. That's how much the codes have changed from when the hospital was built in 1929. We're talking about vintage of these rooms. And we're not replacing 40 of the individual rooms. We're making 40 individual rooms now. They were double occupancy in the existing building. So we're really not talking about apples to apples when we talk about vacated space back in the existing hospital. It's a much smaller footprint that the hospital is going to be looking to backfill, if you will, and really what they're going to be doing is expanding on much needed space for deficiencies in their existing hospital, on-call rooms, for example, and things that David has already touched upon.
That was exactly the point that I was going to make, that we're going from 7,500 square feet of space, and there were only 23 rooms.
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to make the same point, that we're going from 7,500 square feet of space and 23 room elements, if you will, for the number of rooms that there are. It's not 40 rooms today, so thanks, Gary.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Carrie has mentioned, all of you have mentioned about the new stringent code requirements is necessitating, driving a lot of this. And I'm assuming that you went over this with the planning board exhaustively. I'm just wondering, was there any independent verification of this, or has the planning board been taking your word for this from the get-go?
As far as independent verification, you're talking about the codes that we're citing?
Yes.
We have had to go through a Department of Health and a CON application process, and in that process, we've had to have DASNY review the entire set of drawings and ensure that we are complying with all of the existing codes. And by doing that, we have to show the clearances around all of the patient treatment areas. The operating rooms have certain square footages they have to meet. We have to show the minimum overhead ceiling heights, and we have to prove that our ventilation systems and supporting electrical systems are meeting all of those minimum code requirements. So we have submitted to state agencies for if that's what you want to consider an independent.
That's actually, I appreciate that you're in compliance, but that's really answering a different question, because what you're telling me is that you are in compliance with codes now, but what I was wondering whether this was the minimum that was necessitated in order to be in compliance with the codes. I just didn't know if anybody had independently verified, and I'm not suggesting that you're not completely accurate. I just didn't know if the planning board did an independent study or whether they took your word for it. But I guess the answer is no. They took your word for it.
Right. The planning board has employed its own consultants, including the village engineer, to review the plans. They've not employed a third-party architect to review if this meets the minimum. No, so that
The building inspector will review that
right
at that
right.
process.
But again, it is a fairly comprehensive review done by both the State Department of Health and DASNY, which is Dormitory Authority, the state of New York. So the state has really two agencies looking at this design review, and it's in many ways just for that reason. So it isn't overbuilt. They do really look at both.
And I have one more question, which is because you brought up the screening several times. Has the planning board put any requirements in place to ensure that those plantings and screenings are going to be maintained over time, or has that not been part of the planning board process with all of you?
Maybe I should let the attorney answer it, but I will say that it's typical site plans. What happens is that you have an approved site plan, an applicant has a responsibility, a legal responsibility to maintain that site plan in the manner approved by the planning board. Right, okay.
I'm sure that if and when the time comes for a final resolution of site plan approval, that is very frequently a condition that the plantings and screening be properly maintained and replaced as in the next available growing season. And that's, if a site plan is a continuing approval, which requires continuing compliance. So if you fail to comply, let a fence fall down or let plantings fail, I'm sure John Fenton would be around pretty quickly to remind us of that continuing.
It's been a problem with the
obligation.
village, though. It's not as easy as
Yeah.
you think to keep these things maintained. but-
Right, but there's also an independent obligation to maintain the accuracy of the seeker representations in the environmental assessment and the other supporting documents. So I think that will be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a question for the applicant?
I just had a quick question, I think for Jeff. Has to do with the percentage of the lawn area that's being retained. The neg deck says that it's 82% now with the current plan. And I just was wondering, does that include, there's 2 access points that are going to be closed and converted to green space on Montgomery Street, and I was wondering if the 82% includes the additional area that will become part of the green space or not.
It does. It includes this area again, and I pointed out this one access point where there's pavement being reclaimed. There's a second access right next to it, and that's being reclaimed as well. So yes, the preservation numbers really do include all of that external screening along this entire frontage, really starting from this point and going up the whole length of the project area. So yes, it does, and thank you for reminding me that yes, we do remove pavement and add plantings in both those areas.
But in the interest of accuracy, the removal of that driveway was always part of the plan. So the 62% calculation in the August 2013 plan, 62% of green space, likewise included
Gotcha.
closing that entrance. That was always part of the plan.
Anybody else? Questions?
I have one more question.
Okay.
Would you go back to your elevation with ramps, please? No, the section.
This one?
Yes. So, how, looking at the elevation, this ramp that goes from the 3rd floor proposed to the 3rd floor existing.
Yes.
Is that, now, when I look at the elevation, and I might have misinterpreted it, that does not, where does that appear on the 3rd floor level?
So all of the ramping for, all of the ramping for the floors exists in that connection point only. And the intention there was to minimize ramping that occurs within the actual clinical unit. It's going to keep the ramping into a controlled and narrow area, and it's going to actually extend the length of the ramp over such a long length of connection that the ramp appears to not exist at all, if you will. It's actually such a low slope, it's not considered a ramp by code standards, so there's no handrails required, we don't have landings required, but we're trying to mitigate the impact on the staff as much as possible because there will be traffic going back and forth between the existing hospital and the new proposed addition. And on the 3rd floor, what we're talking about is supplies in the form of sterile carts that are being supplied to other areas of the hospital, like the emergency department. On the 2nd floor, we're talking about traffic that includes patients themselves. So the patient beds will be actually wheeled back and forth between this because there are other
Can you
existing
put that
units.
up?
Sure. The 2nd floor The second floor plan, if you see, matches the third floor plan exactly in that connection. So it's a bridge connection. It doesn't occur on the first floor. So the elevations have been created in a way so that you don't perceive a sloped change between the two buildings. The materials have been played with in terms of bringing that red brick shelf on the bottom level up to the underside of the second floor. We've made sure that the sill heights from the windows in the two are consistent. And so what you see from afar is really just a consistent language from one building to the next that has already been established on the site.
So in this picture, would you put your red dot on the ground floor connection is there?
Correct.
And that just goes across from the front desk of the hospital over into the doctor's offices.
Correct.
Section, in that lower section, whatever the name is.
Correct. There's two connections on the first floor. One of them is here that you're seeing, and that is the connection between the main lobby and the new proposed addition. And then the second connection is here, which it's a little bit hard to see because of the line work, but it's connecting to the west wing, the existing lobby on the west wing. There's already an entrance there, and part of the effort of the hospital is to really send all traffic through that main entrance of the hospital now for security reasons.
So on this ramp, the one that has a slight angle on it, that only occurs on the second and third floors.
It actually only occurs between the second and third floors, but as you recall, the second floor, this is completely level, because this was our biggest concern here, where the patient traffic, and again, not only staff but visitors will be going back and forth between here as well, because these two elevators will be the main public elevators for the hospital. So if somebody's going to visit their family member in the ICU, they would be using these elevators here. And we don't want to create a hazardous condition for the public in addition to the staff, pushing the beds. We want to make it as easy to transverse these two hospital portions as much as possible.
So the top part of the ramp is for supplies and personnel, and the second floor ramp is for patients, is that?
The second floor is a public access corridor, correct. So not only will it see traffic from the staff members pushing patients in beds back and forth, but it will also see traffic from the public, from the visiting family, from people that are just looking to take a walk in the hospital. It's a publicly open corridor the same way that the first floor lobby would be. On the third floor, that's a restricted corridor. It's staff only, and it's going to be for the use of bringing sterile supplies back and forth between the new proposed and the existing.
Can you show us that connector on your elevations, please?
So the connectors are so far back that you actually almost don't see them.
So you can't show that to me. Is that
So
it?
that's a connector there.
That's a piece of it.
That's a piece of it there.
It's at an angle, so you're not getting.
It's angled away from the main elevation, and it's set so far back that you almost don't see it at all. So what you
There
do
it is
see,
on the first floor.
that's the first floor
And then
connection.
actually above that
Right,
is the,
the second and third floor connection, yep.
but it is a two-story corridor.
Yes, it's a
It's a
corridor
second-
on the second floor, and it's a corridor on the third floor. And the third floor has the sloped walk,
Right.
but
And
the second floor is level.
flat. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay?
I hope I didn't bore the rest of you with my.
Okay. We'll have comments from the public in a minute, but I wanted to tell you about two emails I got today. So they're into the record. One was from Teresa Villardi. Her comments had nothing to do with the 35-foot variance, 33.5-foot variance request. So I'm going to leave that in the file for the planning board to see. And the other email I got was from Kate Long, which is a number of pages, which was circulated to everybody on the board, and they have all read it. So when we open this to public comments, Kate, anything you would like to point out relative to this height variance would be just fine. But everybody's seen this memo. At this time, we'll open the hearing to any public comments. Again, please restrict them to the height variance and let the planning board worry about grass and parking and so on and so on. Anybody? Go ahead, you'll just come to the microphone so we can hear you. And make sure you state your name for the record.
I'm Phyllis Marsteller. I live here in Rhinebeck. And I'm concerned about the flat roof. If you had like a foot or two of snow up there, are there provisions for, drainage, special conditions?
I'll ask the architect to respond.
I can speak to that. When we use the term flat roof in architecture, a flat roof is actually a low slope roof. So it's perceived as flat, but we use tapered insulation to make sure that all water that ends up on the roof, including snow and ice, is directed towards roof drains that are placed in intervals across the entire surface of the roof, according to the snow loads and the rain loads that will be calculated by our engineers, so that we make sure that any water that ends up on top of the roof has proper drainage. And it's part of the review of the building inspector as well.
And I have another question. You have all of these single rooms. I'm wondering whether insurance companies nowadays, how they treat patients who go to single-room facilities instead of double-room facilities.
I can't answer that question. That's if you want to take a quick shot at it, but remember, we're trying to keep this to the 35 to 38 and a half foot variance request.
Generally speaking, today, we charge one rate, whether it's a semi-private room or a private room. So it's not an issue with the insurance companies.
Thank you.
But the reason for the all private rooms, though, is because the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, want all hospitals to go to private rooms because it eliminates the possibility or the potential for infections in the patient rooms, and it eliminates roommate incompatibility reasons for whatever reason there might be.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, please, so we can hear you, and please state your name for the record. Thank you very much.
My name is Susan Rich. I'm a resident of Rhinebeck. I was wondering if a scale model has been done, or because we're just looking at plans.
I don't know, David, can you answer that question? No, it has not been.
Would it be, if it would be helpful, then it might possibly be considered?
I guess that would be up to the hospital.
I mean, there's a scale on the plans, so you can get an accurate.
Yeah, but not an actual,
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Of the 4 people who are wearing those large buttons, are you HealthQuest employees, or are you employees of the Northern Dutchess Hospital, or are you residents of the Village of Rhinebeck?
I'm the chair of the board of the hospital.
Okay, and you, please?
I am a employee of Northern.
Okay, fine, and you, please?
I'm a volunteer there,
Okay,
and I'm his spouse.
all right. All right, thank you, just checking.
Go ahead, Doug.
A Dodd Crane Village resident. A question for you, Francois, just on the procedural environment here. There were a number of comments that went back to planning and lighting and parking issues, including the whole presentation by HealthQuest. Why is it that the public can't speak to those issues if the proposers speak to those issues?
That's a good point. I hope that they would not have gotten into those areas. If you want to comment, go ahead.
So my broad, I have several broad comments, but they'll be brief. Go ahead.
Let me just tell you, we don't have any, we probably can't do anything about them. It's a planning board issue. That's why I was trying to avoid them. But go ahead.
Well, and my first and broadest point is, and I think much of the public is aware, that a number of us as private citizens have taken action to oppose the current plan. I personally believe that a more motivated health organization and engineer and architect could have come up with a much better plan for the village that would not have compromised the green space. I understand we're way down the road at this point, but I believe somebody was motivated that way would have been a better plan that would work for the hospital and the community. The other point I'd like to make just as a citizen, as I've gone through this process, is that as private citizens, it is, without having significant financial resources, which none of us have, to contend with professional architects, attorneys, and builders in trying to comment on and provide alternatives in a complex construction environment. And so it comes back to the point of when the organizations that are proposing this plan come in and speak, they take quite a bit of time to give you their perspective, their sales points of view, if you want, on why this is a great plan. And often the public doesn't get to see it till that night and can only react and can't employ the professional resources to respond and provide alternatives. We happen to have had more time to do some of that, and have had some significant cooperation from the builder and the Health Quest in doing that at certain points, and then that cooperation broke down. But just as you continue as a board and as you consider this, I ask you to consider the struggles that private citizens have had, and there are over 500 of us, as you know, because I think you were involved with the original presentation of the petition, who are struggling to find a different alternative for this plan. So coming down to the specifics of the plan, I still oppose the plan as it's currently stated, primarily because of the green space implications as the way the building's engineered. You may or may not be able to address that as a board, but since you asked ancillary questions about what the impact was of the internal plan of the building on external surrounding the property, I asked you to consider all that and consider the significant public concern about even the current configuration of the front lawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
God opened the door, so I'll go through it. Good evening, y'all. I'm Kate Long. I live at 86 Montgomery Street, which is right at the corner, at the lower right tip there. I did want to enter into the public record some facts about the work that Health Quest has done in preparation for the amended negative declaration, specifically facts related to two pieces of analysis they did. One is the parking analysis for Northern Dutchess Hospital campus expansion dated December 10th. Within that analysis, they alleged the need for 268 new parking spaces based on a formula developed, I guess, by a national engineering group. And because of that, there's this extensive need for this large parking lot. But in their traffic study report, which was prepared by Chazen on November 15th and relates more to the intersection of Route 9 and the need for any signalization there, that report, as I read it, alleges that there are only 79 new trips, people entering the campus in the AM. So these numbers are highly conflictive, if I read these reports properly. They present information in two distinctly different ways that allege certain needs in certain ways. The 79 trips in the AM is particularly important because that traffic analysis also identifies 3 thresholds that have been met for that intersection there to be signalized. And living there, I can tell you that it's very, very, very heavily used at certain times of the day. People wait much longer periods of time than they do other intersections coming onto Route 9. And further, other intersections on Route 9 up, which would be Locust Grove and the Village Green, also suffer very long periods to turn out onto Route 9 on left. So I guess the question would be, in my mind, is Northern Dutchess Hospital going to have 268 parking spaces and the equivalent traffic, or is it 79? So I guess I would just ask that some more investigation of the analysis and verification, as Rachel mentioned, be done on the analysis provided by Chazen and Health Quest in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that?
Sorry.
May we respond to that?
Sure, absolutely.
And again, appreciating that this was both the parking analysis and the traffic impact study were submitted, reviewed by the planning board, by their consulting engineer in detail. But the real issue is the parking is related to parking demand overall at peak conditions on the campus. Traffic studies, as they are conducted, identify worst-case scenarios. They identify the worst, the peak hour in the morning and the peak hour in the evening to determine during that hour what are the worst operating conditions, what's the most traffic of the studied intersection. So that's why you talk about an overall parking number versus a peak hour. They are, I think it was Kate said it, they are two completely different pieces of information. There is not a correlation between those two things. One is total parking on site, and the other is that peak hour of movements in and around there. So,
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'm Susan Coffin. I'm a town resident. And one of the things that I'm wondering about with regard to the height variance is the power that this board has with regard to the trees. Because it's one thing to plant a 4-foot tree or a 6-foot tree or a 15-foot tree. I've lived here for 30 years, and I've planted some trees that have grown over the 30 years, and they're very, very large, and they shield buildings from view very effectively. So as a community, if we're concerned about the height of this building, we can knock out the building from view with judicious planting. And is it within the power of this board when you grant, if you should you decide to grant the variance, to state that the height of the trees that will be planted, because to show trees and not to state the height of the trees to do two very different things. Do you have that power?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Oh, I was going to leave it to the chairman. Go ahead. I believe that we do have that power.
Uh-huh. Well, this might be a very good opportunity for you to use that power. And in terms of the trees, I don't know if it's been identified whether they'll be deciduous, whether they'll be evergreen, and whether they're going to hold their leaves or not hold their leaves or whatever, but to be compatible with our environment. The other thing that came to mind when Larry was speaking was that you have a height variance. And in order to meet the height, on one side they're choosing a flat roof rather than a mansard roof. And maybe you should step back, if it's within your power, step back and say, well, what have we achieved by stating a certain height that requires perhaps an aesthetic look that in fact maybe we don't like as a community? Are you following me? In other words, you see a flat roof, it has a totally different look than a mansard roof. And a flat roof, if you can see it full view without any tree coverage, is very industrial looking, even with the softening effects that they have. So I think the question is, what have we achieved by limiting the height? Maybe if they could even go up higher than they're requesting, you would end up with a better result. Now, I don't really want to confuse the issue, but I'm just saying you always have to look at what is the goal, and are we achieving the goal, or are we adhering to a concept that maybe doesn't play out very well? So I'm just offering you some advice, because we have a dilemma here, and I'm not even going back to years ago and when this was all planned and whether it makes sense for our community or any of those issues. That's not for me to say. I'm coming very late into the game, looking at this problem and trying to address how we as a community can work with the hospital and come to a result that we're all happy with. And it does appear to me that some concessions are being made and that there is an attempt for us all to work together. So I just want you to focus on those two things that I've just identified. Thank you.
I think your points are well taken. I would say that John Clark is the person that should be hearing them more than us. We can place conditions, but the questions of planting and the questions of mansard versus flat roofing are really planning board questions. So I'm glad we have a member of the planning board here to listen to what you had to say.
The only it's a very interesting point, but it's only adding complexity to this particular moment. And, of course, if they did transport the mansard roof onto the new section, they would need more of a height variance.
Right, but that's.
Architect want to comment?
I just wanted to comment real quickly because while we are calling this a building that has a flat roof, we've made design efforts to mimic the mansard roof that's on the existing building. We're doing it through the means of a mechanical screen so that you won't see the mechanical equipment beyond that's on the roof. And it has a sloped surface, the same that a mansard roof would. The difference in the construction is that the mansard roof is actually part of the cornice and the roof edge. It's integral to the enclosure of the building shell itself. We've made ours in terms of a design that helps us mimic the same aesthetic that the existing building is achieving, but we're trying to reduce in an effort to appease the neighbors in the community and reduce our impact on the neighborhood. We've made an effort to use a more creative design that keeps the building as low as possible, but also gives an appealing aesthetic visual to the neighborhood. Is that?
Well, Gary, I'll just add to that, that not only have we been trying to work with the community in terms of all issues, landscaping, height, et cetera, but even independent of neighbors, we have a legal obligation to minimize the variance we're coming in to request. But I think that part of our design, as Carrie said, was to assure that the new addition is compatible in appearance with the one that's existing, and that the overall appearance of the views of the hospital will be a pleasant one, as shown in these elevations.
Right. Great constructive comment, and one we've had both internally and with the planning board. And again, that's what this, as Carrie's talking, this shows. This is the existing Rosenthal Pavilion with the mansard. Here's the main entrance to the hospital, and this is again a rendering as opposed to the flat elevations which we showed on the other slides. And you can see the screen wall above the flat roof here, again to mimic both the coloration and the design of the mansard. So we absolutely have worked to bring that into as a design feature here.
And is that where the 38 feet is measured to?
The 38.5 feet are measured to the flat roof per the zoning code.
I'm asking if the screen is sticking up past that.
Yes, the screen is above that. Yes.
All right, would you show us that picture again? There you go.
Yeah, let's see. There's that one.
This one.
So the 38 feet is to the top of the cornice, and the screen is a separate piece on the roof.
The
So
38 is the highest point of the flat roof.
Right.
The highest point of the flat roof, meaning the minimal taper in the insulation.
The highest point of the table,
Right,
which
the
is
highest
above
point.
ORs. That's the highest.
And then this sticks above that.
Yes.
Larry, when you calculate a building height, you base it off of the finished grade across the street frontage, and then you take it up to the highest point of the flat roof. So I rely on the professionals to supply me with that height, and I just make sure that it conforms to the code. I didn't want to go off
I was going to a
track.
slightly different thing. I'm certainly not assailing their efforts. I wanted to ask John, is that how you understood it? That the
Screen is above the
38.6 is to the
Screening is
cornice,
not
and
part of
the
the
screening is a
roof.
piece
Not
on the
beyond
roof,
that.
which actually brings it up another 3 feet, 4 feet? Did you guys have a picture of that when you made your positive recommendation? I mean, I know you had this picture. Is that part of the building? Is that part of the roof? Is it just a billboard on top of the roof? What's the status of that?
You want Well, he's asking you, but I will, basically, I'll read the definition. All right, building height. The vertical distance measured from the average elevation of the finished or proposed finished grade across the street frontage of the building to the highest point of the flat roof or to the mean height between the eaves and the ridge of a gable, hip, or gable roof. So that's the definition. This roof is a flat roof. So we're, you know, and now we're talking roof, not screening, not mechanicals, the roof. So basically, it's the finished grade across the street frontage of the building to the highest point of the flat roof, period.
So how high is that little thing?
Well, we've got a thing going all the way
But I
around
know,
the
but how
building
high is that, to
screens
the
it.
top point
It
of
looks
that?
like it's 3.5 feet, maybe?
It's not quite 3.5 feet, no. So, for example, if you were to be required, as was just read to you, to measure a sloped roof, you would go to the midpoint of that sloped roof, okay? So you never account for the full height of that triangle shape because you never perceive the full height of the triangle shape, especially from the ground level. So if we were to go to the midpoint of this, it would add 1'6". It's a very small addition to the top of this flat roof. And again, we could remove that mechanical screen, but I don't think you would like what you see if we remove that mechanical screen, because then you'd see the rooftop units, you'd see the air handling units, you'd see all of that equipment that we're doing our best to hide from you so that it's as aesthetically pleasing and matches the existing nature of the campus as much as possible.
Thank you. Anything else on that particular issue? Anybody else would like to speak? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the, oops,
John.
go ahead, John, you want to speak? All right.
Oh, good.
I'm John Clark. I'm a village resident, county planner by trade in the day, and on the village planning board. And I speak for myself here, not for the planning board. Although we did ask the zoning enforcement officer to do a written ruling on the height variance so that it was clear from his perspective what the required height variance would be, because we had those same sorts of questions. So in terms of the overall project, I go back on the planning board quite a ways, and I wanted to just put some longer-term perspective into this quickly. We reviewed the first phase one back in 2004, 5, and 6, I think it was. And we approved not only phase one, but a phase two, which incorporated the idea of an additional office wing where this is going to be, although this is much different because they decided to do new patient rooms and operating rooms as well as offices. But I do remember that as part of that review, there used to be a 54-car parking lot directly in front of the doors of the hospital. And we requested and required, the hospital cooperated, to move that parking away from the front door to the sides of the buildings in phase one, and that in phase two, that it would come back, but still be not infringing on the lawn from the door, the front door of the building. To nine. Yes. Okay, so yeah, you see it. So, plus, there was a height variance at that time, which as I remember, was higher than what they're requesting now. So I just wanted to put that sort of plus, you know, there were no sidewalks required along all of Route 9 and all of Montgomery Street in those days. So I just wanted to say, and I said this at the planning board meeting, so I thought it was useful to reiterate to you, this board, is that the hospital has been extraordinarily accommodating in this reiteration of phase two, in that it didn't hold fast to those requirements there. They've actually worked with the residents, worked with our board to try to improve the site plan over and above what was approved in 2004 for phase two. They've included, I'll just state three big things. They've included sidewalks along the entire frontage. In 2004, it was only to the front door, not along their entire Route 9 frontage and the entire Montgomery Street frontage. We think that's significant. They originally came in with parking that was equivalent to the 2004, roughly equivalent to the 2004 approved plan. And when people in the audience and others objected to that, they backed off. They saved more of the green than was allowed in the 2004 approvals. And third, in terms of the height variance, they originally came in with, and I can't remember the height.
It was 7, wasn't it?
It was originally 7 feet. I thought it was a 5, but it was 7 feet, much higher. And they worked with the board because they knew that this was a concern, and they worked to minimize that down to 3.5 feet. And they worked with us on architecture and other elements to make that happen. So I just wanted to put in a word that I think that the hospital has been extraordinarily accommodating and has made the plan much better than was approved in 2004 in many ways. And so I think they should at least deserve some credit for minimizing the height variance down to the absolute necessity.
I'm curious why you approved the plan in 2004 if the hospital was able to make it so much better. Have you done any searching back to the planning board process at that time?
Well, remember, we were starting from a different place. We were starting in 2004 with a parking lot in front. We thought we did improve it by moving that parking away. The fact that we could get better at it. The other thing is that they did a more sophisticated parking analysis that showed that there was excess spaces on the lot now, and they deducted from that so that they didn't have to have as much parking as they originally would have expected. So there was a lot more sophisticated analysis in this round than I think in the first round.
Thank you very much, John. All right, I think at this point, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing. So moved.
Second.
Second, everybody in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, now, board. Can I make a motion, and then make a motion and just append the resolution?
Okay, well, I just want to reiterate what you said earlier in the meeting, is that this is, what we're acting on tonight is simply an area variance of 3.5 feet, and our job, we have a very modest role in this whole project. Our job is to weigh the benefit to the applicant versus the negative impact to the community, or in this case, the larger Rhinebeck community. And we've gone through all the materials. We've been given the environmental assessment analysis by the planning board. And in my opinion, I don't find any negative impact to the community. And so I'm in favor of the variance application, and I would move to approve the variance resolution that has been prepared for us. That's.
Do you want to read the resolution out loud, or no?
Sorry, what?
Does the resolution need to be read out loud?
Well, you don't have to. I mean, it was provided to the board. If you want to read it aloud, that's fine, or if you simply want to acknowledge the fact you've read it and...
I think we'll just append it to the motion.
I would add something to the resolution, which was that...
We have a second. I just want to point out that we have a second to my motion.
To your motion to approve the resolution.
Correct.
But I wanted to add something to the resolution before it gets approved.
You can amend it.
Well, why would I second to your motion?
You can amend my motion.
Well, I don't want to amend your motion. I just wanted to add something to the motion.
Well, you
Yeah,
can.
if there's something that you want, I mean, I circulated this for comment, and I didn't get any. I mean, is there...
Because it wasn't something I would have commented on until Barbara brought up the issue about the trees, and I think we should include that in our motion.
Robert's Rules of Order would require a second to the motion, and then the discussion would open, and in discussion, you could make an amendment to the motion.
Correct.
You can't just discuss a motion that isn't seconded.
That's right.
Well, it was seconded, wasn't it?
That's right. That's why I pointed that out.
I wanted to just amend the motion that we were voting on, that's all. But we can do it, whatever.
You can't vote on a motion, and you can't amend the motion until you have a second.
What did you say?
Well, he's saying that we have a second to the motion. And now we can discuss it. We can discuss the resolution and the motion. And Rachel has a comment and a point that she wants to make.
So,
You want to second the motion?
we have a second.
We have a second.
Okay, so now can we discuss
We're in
it?
discussion mode.
Now we have discussion. So what is your point? You want to go to the trees?
I just think we should put a condition on our motion that it goes back to the planning board that they consider plantings that will reach the height and minimize the impact of the height variance.
Do we have the legal aspect to do that?
Yes, we do.
I don't know about that.
Well, we do, because I'll tell you why.
If you're simply referring it back to the planning board, that they take consideration. I mean, I believe that they have a plan that sets forth the height of trees. Now,
It's not just that we want them to take consideration. The zoning law allows when we issue a variance, we're allowed to put conditions on that variance. And one of the conditions that I would propose be added to the resolution that we put on the variance is that the trees, the height of the trees be considered to further, that we don't just put, I mean, if we put, little shrubs, obviously that has nothing to do anything to the height of the
what is the
variance.
specific condition you want to put on?
That the trees reach the height, to the extent practical, I don't know, I'm not an
All right,
arborist.
so we'll add that condition to the motion, is that correct?
That the trees be considered that most significantly minimize the impact of the height variance.
Okay, so everybody agrees to that? Addition to the motion? All right.
They might have had that in mind anyway. We
I'm
don't know.
sorry?
They might have had that in mind anyway.
But it wouldn't have been a condition.
Well, I would just point out that the tree commission did do an analysis of the proposed landscaping plan and made comments. Very, very, very good comments.
Okay, so we have a motion, the second has been amended. Are we ready to vote?
No, it hasn't been amended.
We just did.
I'm the second. I didn't agree.
You disagree, is that what you're saying?
That's right. I don't think we have the right to put conditions.
Oh, I'll find it for you.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I've been looking for it.
I'll read it to you.
In the law, you are allowed to impose conditions if they're directly related to the issue of the variance that you're granting. What I'm hearing here is that you want the planning board to consider the height of the trees to specifically limit or mitigate the variance.
Right.
You're not imposing an 18-foot high tree or imposing a 13-foot high tree. And I believe the planning board's already done that, but if you want to impose that as a condition, I would say that's, that the planning board take into consideration the effect of the height of the trees in the final site plan approval.
Section 120-50, imposition of conditions. The Board of Appeals shall, in the granting of both use and area variances, have the authority to impose reasonable conditions and restrictions as are directly related to and incidental to the proposed use of the property. They shall be consistent with the spirit and intent of this chapter and shall be imposed for the purpose of minimizing any adverse impact such variance may have on the village of Rhinebeck. Section 120-50.
Which I think is what I just said.
We get to vote on it, right?
But you didn't cite the
board has to
section.
vote?
No, I didn't.
No.
Ward, do you have a problem with that?
No.
Okay. So we have a motion,
Let me
we have a
just-
second, have we amended it?
Could I just look at something first?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'd like a wording on what the motion is now,
Okay,
because it seems to be a bit confused.
that's what Rich is working on.
Francois, may I ask our planning board representative question about this? I'm just, we're killing a little time here, so I might as well get the benefit of his thinking. Looking at the landscaping plan, John, did you guys at all discuss the height of the principal trees that are going in and how tall are they going to grow? And was that ever part of the discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
There is a lot of existing trees that are staying,
And they're tall.
and they're relatively tall. Yes.
But a number of those tall ones are coming down as well, so the total effect is going to be somewhat significantly different than what I think you're imagining.
This is what I would suggest then. This is, I believe, Rachel's talking about, as a specific condition, that in granting this variance, the zoning board imposes the condition that the planning board specifically consider the height of the trees to minimize the impact of the variance.
Okay,
Which would be right, we will insert it right in front of the final
okay.
resolve clause.
Okay with that, Ward? Okay, we ready to vote?
Call the question?
Okay, aye? Okay,
Aye.
Aye,
Nay.
Aye.
okay. So carried. All right, I have to make a comment about the resolution. Just,
Well, it's as drafted and as amended. This is what the board has
Okay.
voted on.
all right, so we're all set then, right? Okay, all right.
And I'll have that amended for
Okay.
your signature.
All right, I think we're done. A little bit of bureaucratic activity here. We're all finished. Thank you very much for coming. Meeting is adjourned.